Hello all, welcome back to course on digital accessibility. Today we will discuss about what accounts for a poor versus a good accessible interface. Just a quick recap before we begin. So in the previous session we tried to understand what is the meaning of disability and how its definition has evolved over the years, and how the onus is now on designers and engineers to enable the surroundings, the environment of an individual, so that the interactions become more seamless and they are not hindered by any disability for that matter. We also tried to understand various types of disabilities, discussed examples of bad access. We also discussed Rights of Persons with Disability Act, and we also tried to understand ability biases and how we can step away from it. So in the previous session also we discussed the various types of limitations in digital interactions. So it can be visual impairment and what accounts for it, such as it difficult to see text, makes it difficult to see text or images or perceive content that relies on color and all of those visual factors. Hearing impairment, which makes it hard for people to hear audio based content and miss out those details of the interaction. There can be motor impairments, which includes limited dexterity and which can prevent users from using motor movement related interfaces such as a mouse or pressing or finding specific buttons and pressing them. Cognitive disabilities, where the users are unable to understand or comprehend complex informations, they are unable to remember very long workflows. So all of those can be issues. Then there can be learning disabilities or reading disabilities like dyslexia, focus issues related to ADHD, etc. So for each kind of disability, how we can try to move away from non-inclusive options to inclusive options in our interfaces, and try to look at various aspects of the interface. So for example, when we try to when we are trying to cater to people with hearing loss, the non-inclusive options contain hindrances contain listening to music, how to take calls which are audio. So inclusive options can be watching movies with subtitles, or closed captioning, CC, or moving to chats, for which, or having chat as an option in your interface and not just call, or having chat as an option in your interface. So a good example can be, so I'm sure all of you might have used various interfaces to hail cabs or taxis, and you might have noticed that there is an option to call the driver as well as chat with the driver. So in case there is a hearing loss at either end of the spectrum, chat can be an easier option, or vice versa. If there is a vision impairment, then probably chat is not an accessible option, but rather voice call can be a more accessible option. So similarly, for vision impairment, non-inclusive options may be pop-up messages on a device, which are basically visual pop-ups on a device, or text only content which is supposed to be read. What in order to make it more inclusive, you can look at sound or vibrotactile notification. So whenever I'm sure you might have noticed on your smartphone, etc., that whenever there is a notification, it's not just visual pop-up or in the drop down notification menu, it is also a beep or a ping sound along with a vibration depending on your silent or non-silent mode, but these options are available. And there can be voice assistant which can read the text only content. It can also be used through screen readers. So we will also discuss in detail about screen readers in due course in one of the lectures later on. And so in particular cases of speech impediment, for example, voice recognition may be an issue. Or limited time response may be an issue if there are cases of stammering or taking a little bit of time to respond. So if there is if there are clogged response times on your application, that you have to speak in so and so time, particularly you might have noticed in case of IVRS, it quickly starts saying that go back to the main menu because no input received. So all of these aspects, so it's not accounting for that. So probably there can be timeout warnings, or there can be non-voice based authorizations, either image based, video based authorizations, or there can be other text based authorizations which can be enabled for. Then there can be impairments around physical mobility. So of course, like clicking a button or providing shortcuts that do not tire users with a lot of typing and scrolling. So many a times it can be that instead of asking them to type the entire address, you can just ask them to enter your postal code and press a button, and it is able to locate your address. Or in many cases you can ask that turn on your GPS and just ask the application to locate your location and just add some fringe details like flat number, etc. And you don't have to really type the entire thing. Or it can be hands-free control, where you can add like a voice input setting as well, voice command, in order to relieve physical mobility users from typing too much, or even with limited typing this can be the case. So you can even like through voice command enter your postal code. So these are some very funny, hilarious example of bad accessibility. So I just wanted to start off with the non-digital images, and they can be very interesting. So somebody has thought of building a ramp, but the gate opens in front of it and there's hardly any space for a wheelchair to actually turn and go into the gate. Similarly, you can see here that this staircase is like almost on a mountain, and there is just for compliance this ramp has been built, but it is so steep that it is almost dangerous to climb it. So this is really some examples of doing or looking at features which can make your interaction interface accessible, but just doing it for the heck of it and not really understand how it is contributing to the overall experience of the user. So we should shy away from such cases in our digital design as well. So for example, if we look at this dashboard where the person is supposed to enter a name or a last name and then put accept or cancel. So for persons who have either color blindness or color blindness, these color outlines are not visible. Red and green is there, it is not clearly visible because of the gray background and the gray text. The contrast ratio is very low, because of which the text is like becoming blurred, and the shadows etc. is not adding value to the user interface. So it can be low vision related issues. So of course low color contrast plus differentiating color is not visible for each of the button. So you are not able to read text, but you are also not able to understand what is what just by color also. So people who are unable to read English, they can rely on color, but if it is not visible, they are not able to do it. So if we increase like color contrast for low vision users, right? So this is like a dark base with a bright color, same here. And then there is also these indications of green, which is universally accepted as a go. So even if the chances of committing a mistake, that okay, once you have entered your name and your last name, by mistake you are not, it is unlikely, or the likelihood decreases if you also color differentiate a go button against a no go button. So if the accept is green, it is likely that it will catch the user's attention and they will press accept after entering the detail, and by mistake they will not press cancel. So high color contrast plus differentiating color buttons for action buttons, differentiating color for action buttons. Similarly, I'm sure you might have come across a lot of websites which claim to be minimal and artsy and all of these things. And there is this trend of putting text over the main dashboard images are some very beautiful images and the text is overlaid on top. But if the image is contrasted well with the font or the written text, then probably it is readable. But all of these other cases where there is low color contrast, very small font, or here also the contrast is low, the font style is unreadable because of its like sketchiness as well as the design, or the color is merging with the background. So all of these cases, which are very commonly seen in a lot of websites, don't account for a very accessible interface and can be very frustrating to people who are visiting your website. So just in order to cater to aesthetics, you cannot dismiss the usability as well as the accessibility of your product. So, but many times people say that but these are my brand colors. It's not visible here clearly, but these are my brand colors. But that is why I think it is important to understand that always work with a palette of dark to light colors in any web design or digital design. Then there are definitely cursive is not for digital access. This almost reads like an image and it is clearly not readable by a lot of people. Probably because of the running font, people with dyslexia can also not read it. Similarly with merging text over image is also, maybe it looks cool but it's not accessible. We'll look at some more examples. So color contrast between the foreground and the background is very important. So here in this case, although it looks almost nice, but the color of the background of the button and the text, the ratio is 3.47, which doesn't comply with your WCAG guidelines and thus is considered inaccessible. It will not pass any evaluation test. We will talk about these guidelines in detail in due course, and we will also talk about evaluation tools, but this is just to give you an idea about what things we most of the time don't understand or don't look at the nuanced aspects of it, or just let it be like that. So, but here with a slight change of color, aesthetically they look roughly the same, but with a slight change of color the contrast ratio is almost double, and now it is compliant with the guidelines, and thus legally passing your mandates and not getting fined for it. So, all of those aspects are important, but visually maybe it does not make a lot of difference. So, having this awareness, okay, what are the thresholds for color contrast, what are the various ways in which I can make my website or interface accessible without compromising on the aesthetic aspect of design of my interface. You should avoid relying solely on color to indicate anything. So, for example, here it's from like a chat tab, and you want to indicate that this person Yellow Vibes is active currently, or you want to indicate that they are inactive, but it is only this red versus green dot which is indicating. So, if somebody is color blind, they may not be able to see it. So, you can add a small text as well saying active, or they are currently active, or they were last seen. Then recently I am sure you might have seen the vegetarian, non-vegetarian indicator logo. Earlier it was a circle, green circle and a red circle, but again this was realized that because of the same shape it is inaccessible to people who are red and green color blind. And as I had mentioned it before, this is a very common illness and very common disability, with a big number of people even in our country having this kind of disability. So, then the government mandated that okay, and they changed the shape. So, now vegetarian is green dot and non-vegetarian is red triangle. So, now with this small change, it is also accessible to people who are color blind. Then interactive elements are easy to identify. We have to make sure of that. So, this can be an example of inaccessible. So, for example, it is asking you to save changes after filling a form or something. There is yes or no, and then there is read more, click here. So, the issue with this is that if this is a hyperlink, then it is not clearly understandable from this text that it is leading somewhere else, leading us to somewhere else. So, then also the text can be more specific, the text on the buttons can be more specific. So, instead of saying yes or no, it can be a reaffirmation of the same question. So, it says save or discard instead of yes or no. And then it is also the hyperlink underline along with the more descriptive text, which is read the specifications or click here to download user guide, and then it is a hyperlink. So, it is very clear with this interface that what it is enabling. So, in case of images, it is always very important to include alternative text, alternative descriptions. So, for example, there is an image, there is an audio description, but it says image. So, either so there is a big chunk of the industry now looking at auto generated alt text So image annotation and all of those things are a big part of it. And so if it is a little bit more descriptive, it can be sunrise at the beach as a caption, which is more descriptive. Then the navigation options need to be clear and consistent. So, for example, page 1 has item 1, 2, 3 and then search. The moment you open some other page, the taskbar design changes. So, here it starts showing a drop down, while the previous pages were not showing anything like that. So, the dashboard and some of the fixed items, the navigational tab which is there supposed to be on the top, should be consistent, most likely the same, in order to make sure that if there is any further bifurcation of information, you can have a separate tab underneath the main dashboard tab. Otherwise, it will become very difficult for people to keep tabs of where in the navigation they are currently at. Try to look for ways to disable moving content. So, for example, if like nowadays it is very common that the image, but the banner is a video, as soon as you land on an image, it starts playing. So, for example, I may be a person with blindness who is anyways not interested in seeing, or is if anyways I am unable to access the video footage, I do not want to see, or I want to stop it in between because it is also interfering with my screen reader audio. So, there should be an option to turn it off as well, either the sound or just pause the video in order to. So, animation without control should not be there, animation with some control should be there. So, also people with ADHD may face issues in focusing on the important elements of your website, because they are getting kind of diverted to again and again to the moving animation. So, if there is an option to pause it so that they can actually focus on the important bits of information followed by the banner, it will be useful for them as well. Use of labels and instructions for form fields. So, for example, having no label actually on top or just putting it inside many a times is inaccessible. But if you also once you type it, the label disappears, but having it like this also is a feedback mechanism for you as well, that what have I filled in this. So, many a times you would feel that okay, probably in case of a name it is a trivial information and you will definitely be able to recall, but what if somebody else is filling for you, or they are or there are other longer forms where it is like education or etc etc. So, if it is education 1 and you fill it, education 2 you fill it, and you forget about it what it was asking, then it becomes difficult to review the form also many a times. So, labels will be helpful if it says education 1, education 2, then you understand that okay, this is something related to, the question was related to mentioning about my education. So, that is why I have filled my school detail or college detail or whatever. Indicate hierarchy. So, using different typefaces or font sizes. So, if your subheading and heading are of the same size, it is not clearly indicating the hierarchy. Always use probably a different font type or a different font size, or different color in order to indicate hierarchy. Then there can be more descriptive feedback systems. So, for example, if your password is incorrect and the system only says error, it is difficult to understand what kind of error is it talking about. So, if it is descriptive that okay, password is incorrect, and if you don't remember your password, reset it here with a hyperlink, then it is more accessible in its approach. And it is also highlighting the field which is incorrect. So, both the either of the fields can be incorrect, right? It can be sometimes a user ID that you have entered is incorrect. So, that part is able to get. Avoid using text that is too small or too close together. So, for example, in this case, you might be seeing that it is small text, very close together, longer statements. But rather if the kerning is wider, if it's like spaced out a little bit bigger text, then it is easily readable as well, and it is not jarring your cognitive senses, and it's not overloading your brain. So, avoiding elements with low color contrast, I think that we have already discussed. This is too low. Maybe bigger font it will pass, but otherwise no. So, this is too low. Again, bigger size may pass, contrast otherwise it will not pass. It will feel it is vibrating. But if the contrast is high, you can keep smaller text as well and bigger text as well, and both will pass. So, again I think this part we have discussed in one other slide, that whenever we are placing text on top of an image, it is very difficult to read that. So, many a times people also look at hovering enablement. So, once you hover, or there is a gray kind of sheet that comes in between the image, in front of the image, and then the text appears. Otherwise, just write on the text, or the transparency, opacity of the image changes, and then the text appears. So, you are also showing the beautiful image that you want to show. You're not taking away from the aesthetic quality of your website, but you are also keeping in mind the accessibility guidelines, and thus you are not putting text which is unreadable. So, make sure that you think of these aspects as well. So, other issues, errors and warnings can can't just rely on color alone, and I think this has again been discussed, that here for example it says your email could not be sent, and it's like a light red indication, and here it says it has been sent. So, there is just only a difference of some. So, there is just a little bit difference of only just few words, could not and has been. So, it may be a case where user misses out on actual feedback, whether the email has been sent or not. But if you include icons which are clearer communication, they don't also cause a lot of cognitive load, because just by looking at the icons and without reading all of this long statement, you can tell that yes, the task is complete or incomplete. Right? So, it is lesser cognitive load as well. So, when we are designing for young adults or people with ADHD or older adults, all of these things can be really helpful. And then also adding exclamatory phrases like oh snap, it couldn't go through, or success, yes it has happened. I'm sure you might have all have experienced this ting 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 success with a tick and blast of confetti in your payment app. So I think that is a very good example of multimodal feedback, which is not just relying on the word complete, payment complete, or all of those things. So now that we have some idea of what all entails bad accessibility, what all entails difficulty in accessing different parts of a website or different parts of a digital experience, we can now kind of categorize them also primarily into 3 categories. One is critical issues, the first, and these are the biggest barriers to those using assistive technologies to browse the internet. So essentially it means that if they had the desire to explore, even if they want to do it, they are unable to do it. So these should be fixed with utmost importance. So it may be that the color contrast is so low that none of the text is visible to a person with low vision, despite the fact that they're trying their level best to read the text, they're squinting their eyes, they're going close to the screen, but it is so low that that it's not accessible, or there is missing hyperlink. So for example, the text has an underline, looks like a hyperlink, but when you click, it is underneath the code there is no link added actually. So it's not leading anywhere, it's not clicking, it's not taking you anywhere. So even if I want to go to that part of the website, I'm unable to because the link is missing. So these are some like critical issues, and they need to be compulsorily taken care of. Then the second category can be some serious issues which make the user experience difficult or a frustrating one for users who are either using the assistive technology, or they have a disability, impairment, or limitation that affects the way they browse the internet. So all of these again, color contrast or font sizing, hierarchy, text which is overlaid on top of images, all of those aspects can be brought in under serious issues. There may be other issues like buttons are not clickable, the interface is just entirely relying on color and you are a colorblind person, and hardly any text, so you are not able to make out the workflow, or the workflow is too long and becomes too confusing after a point, it's difficult to keep track. So many times with interfaces which have very long workflows, they have a progress bar also on the top, which is like a constant. So for example, income tax return website or a passport website, many college admission websites also, they have like enter your education, once you do it, it turns green, enter your address, enter your fee payment details, so one by one. So you also are aware where in the long workflow which step you are currently at, and the other ones have been completed and verified or whatever. So these can also be included in order to fix the serious issues. Then there can be minor issues which can cause frustration or poor user experience for a small portion of your viewership. So these aspects not only affect people who are disabled, so the critical and the serious aspects, they affect people who are disabled more strongly, definitely that is the case, but they also critically affect the user experience of people who are not disabled and they are just relying on the ability of their potential users. So again, talking about the ability bias that we spoke about. Minor issues may cause poor user experience for a small portion of your viewership. So all of the other aesthetic reliance aspects which we talked about, that maybe minor color contrast differences, if it's just near the threshold, then it is not. But so it's also about one part is from the POV of users, the criticality, the seriousness or the minority of the issue. The other POV can be the compliance part. So as I had showed you one of the image from a user's perspective, that add to cart, so I can go back. So for example, this one, from a user's perspective, the color contrast might not be affecting that much, but for a low vision user it is impacting. So that means that for a smaller percentage it is impacting, but compliance wise this is non-compliant and this is compliant. So legal impact is higher in this case. So all of these aspects we can look at, and in order to make our interfaces more accessible. And as we'll progress in the course, we will dive into more details about how we can make various interfaces more accessible, what are the different kinds of assistive technologies which are emerging in the domain, what are the different kinds of guidelines, compliance guidelines, accessibility guidelines, what are the mandates around the world and in India. I'm sure many of you might be working in multinational companies, so I think even understanding global mandates can be really helpful, which you can apply in your own workplace. So we'll go through all of those details in the due course of this digital accessibility course. So just to summarize this session, we try to understand what is poor versus good accessibility through various design elements and design decisions which affect accessibility. We can make our work more accessible to a wider set of audiences. There is a very interesting book called Mobile Accessibility Rituals. You can buy it from any e-commerce website, and it talks about very specific use cases, particularly for mobile interfaces as well as web interfaces. And this is a very nice, very readable book, tells you, helps you, gives you tools and tips about making your interfaces more accessible. Thank you for staying with the course so far. See you next week.